welcome back to Elite K-9 Unleashed. Today is episode 5, and we're going to be talking about detection dogs. We're going to take a look at the different types of detection dogs and how we train them.
All right, Chris. So today we are going to be taking our viewers into a deep dive into the world of detection dogs. So dogs that are trained in narcotics detection, explosives, and even people who just want to do some scent work at home, AKC scent work, things like that. Detection dogs in the police canine world, if they're only doing detection work for narcotics and not patrol work, are referred to as single-purpose K-9s. But any dog that's trained to sniff out explosives, narcotics, a certain scent, cadaver scents, there's all sorts of things that dogs can be trained in.
AKC scents, electronics, mold, diabetic dogs. You can go on and on.
Yeah. In fact, I feel like a lot of people have experience with seeing detection dogs when they go through TSA and security at the airport. A lot of times they'll kind of stop you and have you walk through and have their dogs there. And oftentimes they're searching for things like explosives or things like that people might be trying to get onto an airplane, right?
Yeah, a lot of drug dogs in airports too.
So for people that have only had experience maybe seeing a detection canine in an airport or something like that, can you explain to them what the actual job of a detection canine or dog is?
Yeah, so most of your single-purpose detection dogs have some set odors that they've been trained to find. So obviously your drug dog's trained to find certain drugs. The drugs can depend on what state you live in. Obviously, some places like marijuana is legal now, so but those have set drugs that they're trained on. Their explosives have lots of different odors that they're trained on that could be used in explosives. When you start getting into AKC scents, obviously that's more like sports stuff. Then we have dogs that have actual jobs with people, as far as like diabetic dogs, being able to alert them if their blood sugar is too high or too low. Mold dogs are starting to use dogs to detect mold in houses. I think they're finding that sometimes when inspections are done, mold is being missed, and that the dogs are very good at being able to pick that up. So all sorts of stuff that a single-purpose detection dog does. I think most people see dogs as far as in the working line, more like for police officers or at airports, or you'll see them at a lot of big sporting events, that kind of stuff. But there are tons of dogs that are trained to detect all different kinds of odors. We actually, I think they're starting to do some dogs too. We live in Idaho, so potatoes here are big. And they're starting to maybe try to have dogs that are searching for some stuff in potatoes that causes
disease.
Yeah, disease in the potatoes and stuff, so they can catch that before they plant them and all that stuff. So they're using dogs for all sorts of things. Electronics, not only in like prisons and jails. A lot of times you'll see electronic dogs, but you see them on task force, like if they're going to be usually more your internet crime stuff. A lot of those will have electronic dogs that they use to search a house, make sure there's not any hidden devices, any hidden jump drives, some kind of electronics that are being hidden somewhere.
Yeah.
So a single purpose detection dog is just a dog that's been trained to find an odor or odors.
Yeah, I think even the one night when we were watching Top Dog with Savannah, there was a dog and it was trained to detect on peanut oil or something.
For allergies.
All sorts of different things.
Yep.
Yeah, and I watched something the other day where there was a dog that was trained to detect money. So would that be in what instance would they use a dog to search for money?
So we used, in the drug world more, we use dogs to run money to see if it has been around drugs or if it's involved with drugs. To do that, obviously, we train with uncirculated money to make sure that the dog's not alerting on that, right? We're not just alerting on the money, that they're alerting on the odor of the drug odors present on the money. So we'll use that. I haven't seen necessarily that they're using dogs just to detect money, but I'm sure if you train money, all that stuff has odor.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you could train a dog to be able to find money or cash, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Do you feel like there are certain things that you look for in a dog that makes a better detection dog, certain characteristics or traits that they have that make them stand out and would be a candidate for that type of work?
Yeah, so we're looking for dogs, in the police world at least, we're looking for dogs that have crazy toy drive, right? Their toy is their life. They chase it, they'll hunt for it. That's all they want to do. You can also use food to imprint odor. So we're looking for dogs that have a really strong food drive, like crazy food drive, right? You get food out and they'll do anything for food. That's how a lot of your arson dogs, a lot of your electronic dogs, you see more like food based. So we're looking for dogs that have high drives, that want to work and want to work for something, like they really enjoy their toy or they have high food drive.
Awesome. And I know when you're searching for dual purpose canines, you're a little more limited on the breeds that you choose, but are there breeds that tend to excel more with single purpose canines or breeds that you guys look at more often when you're doing that kind of work and only training them for a single job?
Yeah, the nice thing about like single purpose dogs is like dual purpose. That means you have a bite and, drug or a bite and bomb or whatever else. Those dogs were very specific on what we're looking for because the dog has to be able to do two jobs. The dog has to be able to have the confidence and the drive to be able to bite, which most dogs don't. I would say 99% of dogs don't. So when you're talking single purpose, you can pretty much have any dog that has high drive for a toy, high drive for food. So this is where you start to see a range of dogs. Like you could see dogs anywhere from, you still see your Shepherds, your Malinois, Dutch Shepherds, all that kind of stuff. But then German Shorthair Pointers, Labs. I think in the state of Idaho they had like a mix. I think it was a pit bull, something else mixed breed out of a shelter that had what it took to be a detection dog. So those could be a range of pretty much any type of dog that has the drive to work and has either food or toy drive, which is a lot more dogs out there.
Right. Yeah, a lot more flexibility with the dogs that you're able to train on that type of work. So I know there's like a very specific process that you take dogs through to get them onto whatever odor that they're detecting. And I wanted to just kind of dive in and break down the imprinting process that you use, because that's kind of like step one when you're getting a single purpose dog getting to work. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's lots of different methods. I mean, we've been to kind of all over, and you see all sorts of different methods that are being used. For toys, we like to do throws with the dog to imprint odor. So we can imprint odor. We basically have them hunt for their toy. And in the process, you're basically imprinting whatever's in the toy. And then there's a process that we split the odors down because we can do more than one odor at a time. And then we split those odors, and then we start having them search for odors. And so there's a whole process that goes into it. But as far as imprinting, a lot of times we do throws with dogs for toys or throws with toys. For food, kind of the same concept. Basically, instead of using a toy, we're going to set stuff up. A lot of times this starts with like a single box or they make tubes that you can deliver food. They make all sorts of different things that you can do this with.
Yeah, we have lots of different things here on site, scent wall, boxes, totes, lots of different systems that we're able to deliver that to.
Yeah, and essentially you're just getting the dog to realize when he gets an odor, he's getting paid in odor with food or whatever, and you're basically imprinting odor at the same time. And then as time goes on, right, we start to add other things to that so that the dog's identifying the odor we want and getting paid. And during that process, you're imprinting odor the dog's starting to understand that that's the odor that gets them paid.
Do things change depending on if you're training for narcotics or explosives or something else, or is it kind of the same process all the way through, no matter what you're imprinting them on?
It's mostly the same process for most dogs. Explosive dogs, for because you can have passive indications, and this is basically when the dog's telling you they found something, right? So, for like explosive dogs, you want for sure a passive indication, which just means the dog's not digging at it, not trying to bite it, it's just either going to sit down, whatever they've trained the dog for the indication. And we don't want that dog to touch whatever they found, right? We don't want them to grab it. We don't want them digging at it. Explosives can be different. And I'm sure with all these, I mean, are there some different things that you do? Yes, but generally, like imprinting odor, working, a lot of the stuff is the finishing, like how you maybe finish them or what you want them to do as far as their indication, that kind of stuff can change depending on what you're having the dog do, right? Like a diabetic dog, we want some kind of, I wouldn't say aggressive indication, but not a passive indication, right? We want the dog to come up and
Give some sort of active alert.
yeah, to let you know, hey, like you need to check your blood sugar. So the ending process, and some of it throughout, maybe a little bit, but a lot of it's the ending or the finishing process looks a little different depending on what you're doing.
Gotcha. So once you kind of take the dog through the imprinting process of selecting the job they're going to do, selecting the odors that they need to be imprinted on, doing the throws, and then moving to an inside environment where you're working on like a scent wall or the boxes, the totes, whatever the system is inside that you're doing, how do you start to transfer that to real world experience where they're searching in different external environments? I know like with police canines, that is a really important piece to make sure they have those things down, and you guys practice in lots of different places, and them having an alert when there actually is something is really important, because if not, then there could be implications in court and things like that. So I know it's really important for them to be able to transfer that to other environments. So how do you go about getting a dog to do that?
Yeah, so in dog training, a lot of people see like the end picture and think that like that's just how you train the dog, right?
Yeah.
You put things out and the dog finds it. There's lots of steps to get to that point. So you're doing throws, then we'll use like a scent wall or something to kind of split odors. Then we start using maybe boxes or packages or popper boxes or all sorts of different things to be able to deliver the reward. And then once we get those pretty good, then we can start putting hides out. Usually when we start putting hides out, we try to make it pretty easy, right? We're bringing the dog, because even though the dog knows the odor, it's a different picture, right? Trying to get the dog to search instead of boxes or totes or walls, or now we're searching, and when I mean walls, like scent walls, now we're searching like an area, right? So we try to do small searches, small search area, larger amount of odor. And when the dog starts showing interest, we pay the dog. And then over time, the dog starts to figure that game out too, and really starts to hunt for the odor. We use commands for them to go and start hunting for that stuff. And then that just transitions to starting to work outside, starting to work buried hides, starting to work vehicles. I mean, really getting the dog out and about, because they have to be able to perform in the environment, right? We're not going to be in a nice room all the time.
Yeah, you won't have any control over the environment that
so
you're searching.
Getting the dog to be able to function in all sorts of environments, with distractions, with cars, with people, with other dogs. And you just continue to work in those environments till you're able to work through it. And the dog, usually that's why we're looking for a lot of drive in these dogs, because they would rather go hunt or find what they're supposed to find than worry about what else is going on for the most part. But there is you really have to expose them to a lot so that when whatever you end up having to use them for, they're ready.
So a lot of repetition and exposure to just all sorts of different environments.
Yep.
What would you say is your most important job as the handler during this process?
So there's a lot going on. We call them K-9 teams for a reason because it really is a team effort. Yes, sometimes the handler gets in the way. Sometimes you need to let the dog work more. And then sometimes the handler's not doing enough. So your job as a handler is really to give your dog the opportunity to find the odor, be able to place him and give him the ability to get within the scent cone or whatever else to find the odor. So your job as a handler should be letting the dog search, staying out of his way, but paying attention to what did the dog not maybe sniff in the room? What did he pass by? What didn't he notice? And then your job is to make sure those places or things are searched. Make sure his nose is going to those things. So it really is a team. You're letting the dog work, but you're also taking notes on, okay, he didn't touch that backpack in the corner or get anywhere near it. He didn't touch this over here. So that's my job as a handler, to see that and to make sure, hey, I take him over there and we search that area, or we search the other area that we missed. Another big part of the handler is to understand what their dog's telling them, understanding what an alert looks like, understanding an indication, understanding the difference, right? I think this gets really, for a lot of people, gets very confusing. But there's a difference between an alert and an indication. Your job is to be able to read your dog, understand what your dog's trying to tell you, even before an indication, right? Starting to read alert behavior. So your job as the handler is to really pay attention and help your partner out, make sure he's searching what he needs to search, and then being able to communicate, read him or her, and understand what you're seeing when the dog's working.
Yeah, it really is a team effort for you to get them where they need to go, make sure they're searching everything that needs to be searched, and then you being able to trust that they're doing the job you've trained them to do and paying attention to all the small cues along the way. Did you ever have a moment when you and Tango were working together where he alerted and you maybe weren't sure if he was correct, but he was?
I'll use it for the more patrol side or the bite side of things. And this is important. This is why you want to train all sorts of different things with these dogs. Not only because so they see it and kind of understand what they need to do, but you understand what you're looking for and what different behaviors would look like. So we were at a house. I think we had a wanted person that wouldn't come out. We knew he was in the house. So we gave commands. We were going to send the dog. We didn't get anything, so we sent Tango in. He searched all of upstairs, didn't give us any bark alerts or anything like that. So then we moved downstairs, and it was an older home. When we moved downstairs, they had like I say, it was an older house. They had like a long closet that came out into another hallway, and in between those two doors was all of the furnace and some storage and stuff like that. And it was completely filled, probably waist deep, maybe deeper, with clothes and bags, and the whole 8 or 10 foot space was just completely full of stuff. And Tango kept taking us over there, and he jumped up on top of the stuff and would run back and forth, and he's like just standing there barking. He's like looking at me, barking. And I'm like I don't understand what he's doing.
There's no way someone's in here.
Well, I just don't understand what he's doing. Like, I'm looking in here. I don't see anybody. So I'd bring him back out. I'd send him back in, and he'd do the same thing, sit there and bark. But he wasn't like looking down. He was just like staring at me. And so I'm like, I hadn't seen him do that before. So I'm like, I don't know what he's doing. And if I would have been paying attention or had seen this in training before, I'd have been like, oh, he's bark alerting on somebody. Like, I knew he'd bark alert like somebody behind a door or something like that. But we had never like buried somebody in a bunch of stuff. And so I pulled him out a couple times, and we'd searched everything else. So we were kind of thinking, well, we're going to have to look in here. And as we did that, I pulled him out, and some of the cover officers started digging. And I mean, it wasn't they probably moved maybe a foot worth of stuff. and there's our suspect hiding under all the stuff.
Gosh.
So Tango was right on top of him, was sitting there alerting, telling me like, hey, he's right here. And I completely missed it.
He's
So,
like, Dad, it's
yeah.
right under
like, I'm
all
telling
of
you
this
where
stuff.
he is. He's right here.
And then
So.
also, how'd you like to be the person under all that
Yeah.
stuff? Like the dog's just running over
Right.
back and forth over the top of you.
Yeah.
Like,
So, but that was what happens when you do, when you haven't trained certain things, not only for the dog, because he hadn't really seen that picture either, but he still was in odor. He knew like, the guy's got to be right here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after we trained that a while, because obviously when we have a failure in the field, which I wouldn't necessarily call that a full failure, that was probably more a failure on my side. He was bark alerting, doing what he was supposed to do.
And you still apprehended the suspect, so it wasn't a full failure.
But once we trained that a couple times, then what you would see with the dogs once we train that kind of stuff is now the dog's like digging, like trying to get down, makes it clear like, oh, yeah, he's trying to get down to somebody down there. So
it allows you some learning and growth that you guys then, as an entire K-9 team, can take that information from the field, take it to your weekly training, implement those things in what you're doing each week, and be able to be more efficient when you're out in the field working.
Yeah, we see that a lot with all sorts of stuff. If we have some kind of failure in the field, or not even a failure, sometimes they work out, but it's like, hey, this was a really different situation. We've never trained something like this. Being able to take that back, because we train all together, a lot of the K-9 teams here, not only like the agency or the sheriff's office, but other agencies around, and they would have some deployment that it's like, hey, this was way something I never thought I would do, and then being able to bring that back, and then we would like, hey, let's set that up and run that way. The more pictures we can show the dog, the more we can expose them to when it comes time to something like that happening, then they know what they're doing.
What are some misconceptions that you commonly hear or have people ask you questions about detection dogs?
Oh, you get people all the time that say, well, I have food. You know, there's food in the car. That's what the dog's alerting to. Or people think that if they have something somewhere, or another big one too is what you have to understand with like a detection dog is they're detecting odor. How I try to explain this to people is like, if you pop popcorn in a room and you eat all the popcorn, you throw the bag away. If I come into that room 2 hours later, I would be able to tell you, hey, somebody ate popcorn, like somebody made popcorn in here.
Mm-hmm.
So just because there's not source in the room anymore doesn't mean that the odor, and when I mean source, the bag of popcorn isn't still there, or whatever you're looking for, doesn't mean there's not still odor that's left over, right? So you get a lot of people that, well, the dog didn't find anything. No, well, he may not have found the actual source of whatever, but it doesn't mean an hour before we stopped this car or we were in this area. It doesn't mean an hour ago there wasn't drugs in the car. It doesn't mean, obviously, clearly there's odor in the car. So that's, a lot of people get hung up on that, like, well, there's nothing there, so your dog's wrong. That's absolutely not true. Odor sticks around, especially when you start getting into like marijuana and that kind of stuff. That's very strong odor. I mean, you can go in somewhere or a car that somebody smoked marijuana in 2 days ago. Like, think of it like cigarette smoke. If I smoked in a car, like our car, for instance, we don't smoke. We don't smoke in our car. And you got in it tomorrow, the second you stepped in that car, you would be like, somebody smoked in the car.
Smoked in my car, yeah.
Yeah, so same concept, right? Is odor can stay around even when the main source is gone. So that's one thing that I think people get really hung up on, that most people that don't understand detection dogs and odor and that kind of stuff. So that's one big thing that I think people always, just when they're not working a dog, don't understand. You hear the food thing, you hear, like, well, yeah, I have food in the back seat. Yeah, he doesn't care. He's not going to touch your food.
Yeah.
Or we purposely don't feed our K-9s food, table scraps, that kind of stuff, because we don't want them to pay attention to food.
Right.
And most of them, I mean, there are people that give their dog food and stuff, but for the most part, I mean, like Tango, I was really strict about that. And as he got towards the end of his career and when he started staying home and that kind of stuff, like
in retirement,
like for the first while, we'd try to feed him things and he would be like, not even interested, right?
Yeah.
And then once he got spoiled for a while and he started trying stuff, then he liked it more and more. He was retired by then, but
Yeah, the lunch meat. Could
lunch
hear the
meat got
lunch
him.
meat
Yeah, he could
opening
hear that.
from the bedroom.
Yeah, so they don't care about food. They're not going in. They're not getting or searching whatever because there's food. What else? There's lots of legal stuff, and we won't necessarily get into legal stuff, but they think that, they have to give us permission to search their car as far as running a dog around it. They have to. That's not the case. We can run a dog around a car. It's called a free air search. And there are some restrictions on that kind of stuff, but and it's really, I think the frustrating thing, and I more talk law enforcement, but any detection dog, right? I just have a lot more experience in the law enforcement side of things. I think, I don't know if it was misconception or a lot of the judges and the attorneys don't understand how dogs work, right? Most people don't. Like, it's just general public, right? So it's nothing bad against the judges, the attorneys, that kind of stuff, but they really don't understand what is happening, what they're looking for. Everybody wants to see this picture perfect. The dog runs around the car and just sits and stares, right? That's not always how it works, right? The dogs are trained to get as close as they can to the source of the odor. And so sometimes, and depending on amounts and all sorts of different stuff, you can get different reactions from dogs. And the handler sees it clearly, like, hey, that's a clear alert. Like, my dog's in odors, but an alert is like he has a change in behavior. That's not a trained response or anything like that. That I know, I can tell he's in odor. And when you start getting into the court world and stuff like that, and judges and attorneys, they don't understand. A lot of people that don't, right? That took hours and hours and hundreds of hours of training to be able to read each other and read the dog, to be able to say, yep, that, like, I know he's an odor. And so to try to have a judge or an attorney or the public be able to understand what they're seeing,
Isn't
they just
always
don't,
easy,
right?
Yeah.
They're like, well, I don't see anything different. So that makes it tough sometimes. They think it's this picture perfect. Well, the dog didn't sit. Okay, the dog doesn't necessarily have to sit. I know the dog's in odor because of alert behavior. I'm not just saying the dog's in odor. So there's all sorts of stuff, but I feel like in the court system there has been a lot of bad case law that's come out, and a lot of it is from either bad testimony from the K-9 side, K-9 officers, or judges just not understanding what they're looking at, how this works, what's going on. So, and the other thing too is they're not robots, right? People think, well, for sure, this is a dog that's trained to find this, so 100% of the time he's going to find it. Well, that's not the case, right? If I didn't do a good job getting him an odor, maybe there is not a lot of odor. Maybe it's packaged in a way and in a way that if I don't get him right on top of it, maybe he's not going to smell it. Mm-hmm. So just because the dog doesn't alert or indicate doesn't necessarily mean that there possibly could be drugs in there, or explosives, or, like we're talking about all sorts of things. If I don't put the dog in the position that he can actually smell what he's smelling or what he needs to smell, then it doesn't mean he's not a good dog. Doesn't mean he missed it. If he can't smell it, he can't smell it. So, yes, they have really strong sense of smell. But if I don't do my job and get him in the best places to be able to detect odor, then he's not going to find it, right? If he can't smell it, he doesn't find it.
Yeah.
So I guess those are some of the things that I would touch base on.
Yeah, and I think even with all of the maybe misconceptions or lack of education on what maybe attorneys and judges are looking at, I still think having canines on the street is so important with the sheer amount of drugs that we have in society today. And I think as a parent of kids, and everything that's gone on with fentanyl and the huge epidemic that it has become in the US, like, when we were kids, in high school, you might be offered something. And I mean, I never did drugs or anything in school, but I do feel like if we were offered things as kids, 9 times out of 10, it probably was just what you were offered. And now it's a much more terrifying environment for kids who are maybe offered or exposed to something and they think they're getting one thing, but they're not. It just, in my mind as a parent, makes having those canines that can do drug detection on the street so much more valuable.
Yeah, you see, and I feel like we're kind of going backwards even in the state of Idaho, right? Like we're having so much of being able to use some of those resources, not taken away, but restricted and restricted and restricted. And I get both sides of this, right? Like we live in a place where we have rights, where we don't want to just be walked all over and don't have a choice in what we get to do and don't get to do. So you're always balancing this. But I think taking it to the point where a dog can't touch the outside of a car that's out in public, like anybody could touch the outside of a car.
Yeah.
And now we're saying that is a search. Like, I mean, that car, they could keep the car home in the garage if they wanted to. When that car comes out into public, yeah, the dog shouldn't be able to jump all over and scratch it, but a dog should be able to touch the outside of a car. You could touch the outside of a car. The general public probably touches a car in parking lots all the time, getting in and out. And I understand that's the general public. They make set rules for law enforcement. But I feel like we're getting restricted with things that just don't make a lot of sense. Like,
right.
Do we want drugs on the street or do we not? I think the outside of the vehicle is already in public. Like everybody can see it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not taking somebody's rights away by walking a dog around the outside of a vehicle. And I think we've gotten to the point where and it's judges, right? Judges continue to make bad case law, if you ask me. They continue to restrict and restrict and restrict. And it really hurts. It hurts the public, right? We have overdose after overdose after overdose. And it continues to get worse. And yet we continue to restrict more and more of what we're allowed to do, what law enforcement is allowed to do. So that to me just doesn't make a lot of sense. But there is a ton of drugs in the U.S., probably more than there's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to have dogs and use that, because, I mean, quite honestly, probably 95% of the drugs, 98% of the drugs, if we didn't have K-9s here, would be going down the road. Or
Yeah.
because most of those things, aside from marijuana, you're not going to smell. So unless you see something in plain sight, you're not going to be searching that car. You have no way of trying to get those drugs off the street. Right. Whereas with the K-9, we have the ability to be able to do searches and really figure out, like, hey, there's drugs in that car. It gives us probable cause to search the vehicle, and that is how a lot of the drugs are found. So restricting that stuff is only making things worse. But without K-9s, your ability to locate and get drugs off the street is affected greatly.
Tremendously.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because not only are they helping with people who may only have a small amount on them or in their vehicle. I mean, when it comes to trafficking, there's been K-9s that have helped indicate on massive shipments that are being trafficked through the area. And that's a huge win for society to be able to get those things off the street before they get to where they're going and can go into distribution.
Yep.
Is there a difference between how maybe single-purpose K-9s would be used in police K-9 work versus how the military might use them for work?
I mean, not a big difference. Most your military dogs are going to be explosive dogs, right? So law enforcement use explosive dogs. I would say the environment is going to be very different, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of your explosive dogs here are called out if there's a bomb call, like if an explosive is found or they think a bomb, somebody calls in a bomb threat or something like that. So the environment, a lot of times they're in big stadiums or events or stuff like that. in the military, I mean, these dogs are in some pretty serious conditions, right? And they're out doing
Yeah.
missions. They're out in the very, very hot for long periods of time, cold. Um, so they're trained, and I think they teach them a little more to work more at a distance. Explosive dogs in general work at a distance, right?
Right.
Like where a drug dog you might have at the end of a 6-foot leash, which you may still see in like events. They've got them on a short leash working them. But ideally, you want an explosive dog to work out away from you. So I think in the military, they get really good at a lot of that more distance, getting the dog a good distance out in front of them or the team. But I would say it's the same concept, same training. The environmental stuff's probably quite a bit different for the military dogs.
Gotcha. And so you kind of touched on this a little bit. My next question was just, are they used in private security in schools? So obviously sporting events, big arenas, things like that, they're using dogs all the time to sweep event centers and stuff. And I know you guys took the canines in the schools here a lot. Do you want to expand on any of that a little bit more?
Yeah, a lot of you do have private security. We don't see it a lot around here, but a lot like in your really big cities and stuff, a lot of your law enforcement don't necessarily take some of those contracts, right? Like they're too busy to dedicate that to events and that kind of stuff. In some cities, they do. They have teams that are just dedicated to events and stuff like that. But you're starting to see a lot more like private explosive dog teams that event venues can hire to do sweeps at their facility. You're seeing private security. You are seeing maybe some, not a ton, but you're seeing some patrol dogs or bite dogs doing some of that. As far as like the police side of things, we went in all the schools, and maybe some places they have some dogs in schools that are private security or stuff like that. But around here, it's law enforcement that handle all the schools and everything. So
when you go into the schools, you're searching for drugs within the schools, right?
Yes.
That's what you're using the
yeah, and
canines
we'll rotate
for.
around here. Like we try to go to, when you have a K-9, you're going out of the jurisdiction that you work in usually to assist places. So like around here, we'll travel to all the different cities with that team. Whoever lives in that area and patrols that area might only have one K-9 or two K-9s, and they have 3 or 4 schools or 2 schools, and they need to search a school. You need
Multiple canines.
yeah, or you're going to be there all day searching. So we'll rotate and move. That way, we'll show up with that K-9 handler in that town, and then there's 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 of us from other agencies, and we'll all search the school together. That way, we're there 2 hours and we're done, and then we'll usually meet up and train afterwards. But we travel most of your K-9 people end up traveling quite a bit to bordering agencies and stuff like that to assist if they need dogs. A lot of agencies don't have dogs on all the time, and we were one of the bigger agencies around here, along with, really in the area, us and our one of our partner agencies. So we got a lot of calls to go help here or there, and some of our bordering agencies to help them if they didn't have a K-9. State police, we help quite a bit. They only have, I think last time I checked, they had 3 dogs. I think they were looking at trying to get more, and they're single purpose. So we'll help state police all the time. So we try to help out where we can and use that resource as much as we can.
Awesome. What exactly does the process look like if you guys do find something in one of the schools?
So that can be dependent on, a lot of times if we're in the schools, we're just doing the searching. They all sign something that basically, they have control in the school, so we can go in and search. We don't have to have permission from parents or anything like that. And then we kind of allow the principal or the staff at the school to be able, because they can search lockers just anyways.
Right.
And so we kind of leave it up to them, like, hey, we had an indication on this area, and we let them search it and deal with it. Obviously, if they want us to charge people and give it to us, and if they find anything, we'll take it. But we kind of allow them to do the searching and talk with the kids and that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Is there any extra training that you guys do with detection dogs that's needed to help prepare them for a live deployment, just because it is so much higher pressure when you're actually going to deploy them in the field versus probably what they're used to. I mean, it obviously all depends on the circumstances of what you have going on, but if you're going to deploy them to do a detection search, are there like any extra specialized training that you do to help them with that added pressure in the live field?
I mean, just tons of environmental stuff, right? Sounds, noises, noises, different areas, night, day, snowing, raining. I mean, just being able to get the dog out in all different environments. That's really probably the most important thing, so that when it's time to search, the dogs aren't focused on something else or haven't seen something, so they're, freaked out or anything like that. So the extra training, is really put into a lot of the environmental stuff. And how do we do that? We search all over. We search inside, outside, all different conditions, with noise, without noise, lights on, lights off. Like, we just try to do all different things so that it doesn't really matter. The dog just knows what they're doing.
Awesome. Are there any other stories that you want to share with us about Tango from your time doing detection work on the street together, like detection specific stuff that you want to share, or anything else you just would want us to know about detection work in general?
That is what most dogs are used for, especially around here. Like, a lot of us have dual purpose dogs, but I would say the drug side, we probably would do, on a decent day, maybe 3 to 5 searches a day. For narcotics, like it's a fairly common. You're searching quite a bit, especially if you're on night shift. You're searching even more. The bite side of stuff we don't use as much, but it is very nice to have when you need it. But yeah, so I'd say definitely detection side is utilized a ton more across the country. And depending where you go, the bite side can be used quite a bit too. But
so one of the things that we get a lot of calls for here is if we do detection classes. And so we have obviously our detection school for law enforcement agencies that we're able to offer, but then we also have a class for the general public centered around detection work called Scent Seekers. And we do that a couple times a year. We are getting ready to open registration for another one of those classes. So if you guys have any interest in coming to learn here with us at Idaho Elite K-9, the process of doing detection work, we're going to drop that link to register in the comments below and in the show notes as well, depending on where you're catching this podcast at. So if you are interested, we'd love to have you click that link and get more information, or you can always email us at support@Idaho Elite K-9 for more information, or reach out to us on all of our socials as well.
Yeah, and those classes usually fill up fairly quickly. So if you're wanting to do scent work, I try to encourage people, like, if you have a dog that wants to do that, it's great for them. They really enjoy it. It gives you guys something fun to do together. You can go compete with it. If you wanted to start doing some competition stuff, but it's great for you and the dog. But those classes fill up fairly quickly, and we only do
them a couple times.
Probably only do maybe 2 or 3 a year. So if you're wanting to do that, definitely sign up and come learn with us and have a good time. And then, so we're going to finish this episode out. We are going to start doing this would be like our whiskey and working dog stuff segment when we're talking about working dogs. And
why are we going to start doing this segment, Chris?
Well, I like whiskey. That's one of them. But so I think what we're going to start doing, kind of make it cool, is we'll try to have maybe a new whiskey. We really only film twice a month, really. So it's not
we're just sampling it.
Yes,
we're just sampling and giving our review. Yes.
But we are going to maybe try to have like a different whiskey that we'll try and talk about for a second. See if we like it, don't like it, what it is, and maybe while we're talking about working dogs. So yes. I think that'll be just something fun to kind of add, and yeah. We're gonna try it and see how it goes.
Fun addition segment to what we're already doing. So Thank you so much for joining us for episode 5 of Elite K-9 Unleashed, where we dove into all things detection dogs. We appreciate everyone who tuned in to support us, and we'll see you next time in episode 6.